All right, Shalom. First thing and foremost, I want to give all praises and glory and honor that's due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash. Double honors being to the elders, the apostles of Great Millstone. Blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect. Noise in the gospel broad, lifting up the stern of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. This is just a quick lesson through the Spirit. Just kind of meditating on this about how he wants to conquer the Israelites. And really, the name of this lesson is you can't tackle a spiritual temple. All right, because since the beginning of time, since our captivities from the Babylonians to the Greeks to the Persians and the Medes to the Romans, which we're in that fourth beast now, like it goes into the book of Daniel about that little horn that sprung up, which is of the fourth beast, but that little horn representing America. So from captivity to captivity, if you notice that Israelites or Edomites or whatever particular successor at that time that was to govern, rule, or bear rule in the earth, they was to always put hell on Jake. All right, and the nation that put the most hell on Jake is none other than the nation of Edom. All right, which started its rulership in the time of the Greeks under Antiochus, under Alexander the Great, and who you call Philip the Macedon. All right, which were all Edomites. All right, which Alexander's kingdom was divided amongst his four generals. You got Cassander, Seleucus, you got Lassa. What's this? Damn, I keep forgetting, man. But basically, you got Cassander, you had Cassander, you had what's the other guy's name? Cassander, you had you had Antiochus. Matter of fact, I'm gonna just look it up, man, because it just slipped my tongue. So I'm gonna go ahead and look up the four successor generals of Alexander the Great, which were all Edomites. But basically, man, these particular nations put hell on Jake. All right, you had Cassander, you had Ptolemy, Antiochus, and Seleucus. All right, which was known as the Tochi. All right, but those were the four generals of Alexander the Great, which I believe it was another one too that was interchangeable, I believe, with Cassander, if I'm not mistaken, or Antiochus. Yep, and then you had you had his name. What was his name? Lysimachus. All right, but basically you had Antipater, Perdiccas, Ptolemy the First, Seleucus, Antiochus, and you had Lysimachus. All right, which were interchangeable, but nonetheless, these particular Greeks, which were Edomites, which started at governing, ruling the earth, they put hell on our people. All right, and it was always get Jake to go off and defy the words of the Most High, because it tells you in the book of I think it's Judith, if I'm not mistaken, but it tells you that in order to get these people to go off, you get them to rebel from their power. You get them to break the law, statutes, and commandments, which was strictly forbidden in the laws of Moses. Because if you go into the law of Moses, it tells you in Deuteronomy 28, the 15th chapter, on down to verses 68, what will happen to the Israelites if we were to go off from the Most High. All right, we was to be put in captivity. All right, so we're going to start at verses 2nd Esdras. This is the book of 2nd Esdras, 2nd Esdras 11 and 32. It says here, matter of fact, let's start at 30. It says, and then I saw that the two other heads were joined with it, and behold, the heads was turned with them that were with it, and did eat up the two feathers under the wings that would have reigned. But this head put the whole earth in fear. That's going into Titus, Vespasian, and Domitian seizures. If you ever heard of the Battle of Masada, or you ever heard of the Flavian dynasty, this is what this is going into. Titus, Vespasian, and Domitian seizures, which Titus and Domitian were brothers, and the guy Vespasian, you had Titus, Domitian, then you had I believe Vespasian. I believe he was the father, if I'm not mistaken. But you had the two sons that fought in his stead, because when he was trying to set himself up as Caesar or emperor at that particular time, you had a lot of confusion within the kingdom. But yet you had his sons that was fighting the battle, was fighting against the Israelites, which were the Jews. But it says, but this head put the whole earth in fear, and bear rule over it, and those that dwelt upon the earth with much oppression, because you can read about that in Josephus. All right, when it goes into the battle of Masada, when basically Jake was being starved out, they set up martial law around the nation of Israel, and that's what Yahweh Shai warned our people. He said, when you see the abomination that make desolation, flee ye into the wilderness. All right, so a lot of Jakes were being put in slavery. They were being killed off. They were being destroyed under the Romans, man. And this is why In Second Esdras 11 and 12, it goes into those 12 feathers, which goes into those 12 Caesars of Rome, starting with Julius Caesar, all right, which technically that was his last name. They didn't refer to him as a Caesar, but his Julius Caesar, he was none other than a king, or Caesar, which means king. All right, then you had the other one, what was in Luke, the 2nd chapter. It was under the, matter of fact, I'm going to get that Luke 2nd chapter. I believe he had the longest reign because he taxed the whole world, and he brought about the revolt and the taxes upon Israel. And then a lot of times you had what they called the zealots that rose up and tried to go against the government, but they were, shut down, so to speak. But yep, when Cyrenius was governor of Syria, matter of fact, let me find it real quick. And matter of fact, we can do it this way. Yep, Caesar Augustus. There you go. It says that the whole world should be taxed, and it was really talking about the Israelites. All right, but nonetheless, man, throughout these particular kingdoms, man, our people suffered affliction and hell. Esau trying to get that birthright back, but like I said, you can't tackle a spiritual temple. But anyway, going back to Second Esdras 11, and what was I at 30? I believe I was at 34. Yep, I'm gonna start at verses 32 again. It says, "But this head put the whole earth in fear, and bare rule in it over all those that dwelt upon the earth with much oppression. And it had the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been." Because, going back again to the siege of Masada, Jake was eating the leather off the shoelaces. They was eating the sandals. They was eating the garments. They were eating each other's kids, due to the oppression that Esau put on us. And it's really because, going back to the book of Hebrews 12 and 16, he was seeking that birthright, and his hatred for our people has ever more increased, even to this particular day. You look at Jake that's being put in the ghettos, they're being gunned down by cops, left and right. They're being racially profiled, for just being at a traffic stop ends up in a fatality, but it's because our people broke the law, statutes, and commandments. And ultimately this devil, he's as a madman. All right, so this is the book of Hebrews 12, and I'm going to start at verses 16. It says, "Lest there be any fornicator or profane person," it says, "as Esau, who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. For he knew that how afterwards, when he would have inherited the blessing, he was rejected. For he found no place of repentance, though he sought it carefully with tears." So this is the reason of the New World Order. He's seeking to set up a counterfeit kingdom of heaven going on the left-hand side, because he know, according to the book of Genesis, that he was supplanted by Jacob, the birthright. All right, and he's been searching for this birthright ever since, and he's been putting hell on our people. Like I just broke down the history of the Greeks and the Romans slightly, which that's a vast amount of history, which is worth to look into. And actually, I'm getting back into that history and looking up the ancient Roman Empire, the pagan Roman Empire, going into the Greeks, etc. Because this is history we all knew and we all studied, but it's so much to the point you forget it. But it coincides with secular history and prophecy. And that's why when you read in the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter, the book of Daniel's 8, 9, the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter, which the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter, goes into the king of the south and the king of the north, which I believe the king of the south, was Ptolemy. All right, and I believe that he was at war with the matter of fact, let's look it back. I don't want to give the misleading information, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Antiochus' kingdom, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm going to do a double check on that. That way I can stand corrected. Yes, the Seleucid dynasty, Seleucid, not Antiochus, the Seleucids. So technically the king of the north would be the Seleucids, which if you go into the Seleucid dynasty, that's one of Alexander's 4 generals that broke off, and that's how you got Antiochus Epiphanes, which is of the Seleucid dynasty. And you can read about that in 1 Maccabees, the 1st chapter. All right, in 2nd chapters. All right, see, people think that it's talking about the Arabs that's into it with the Muslims or the Turks. No, Daniel the 11th chapter is straight history. All right, but anyway, Jake, man, Esau, he's hell bent on destroying our people. All right, so let's get this in the book of Genesis, the 27th chapter. Let's start 27, and I'm gonna start at verses. Let's go down here. All right, so this is the book of Genesis 27, and I'm gonna start at verses. Yep, let's start at verses 34. It says, "And when Esau heard the words of his father, he cried with a great and exceedingly bitter cry All right, and he's basically crying out now. All right, this is why he's trying to go to outer space. He's trying to find different galaxies. He's doing whatever he can to do away with our birthright, because really the birthright was set up for us through the Spirit anyway. If you go back into the story of Cain and Abel, when basically Abel offered the Most High a righteous sacrifice, we was accepted. Cain offered the Most High a wicked sacrifice, which the Lord wasn't dealing with. So technically he was already rejected from the ancient world. But prophecy had to play out in order for this devil to be in power in this latter time, for him to basically govern or bring in the kingdom of heaven through his kingdom being destroyed. Because Yahweh Shai, if you read in the book of Daniel, and it tells you that little horn, that was going to be the last kingdom of the fourth beast, or the last part or the last leg of this fourth beast that was set to be destroyed before the kingdom of heaven was set up. And if you look at history, that little horn is going into America, and this is the kingdom that Yahweh Shai is going to come back to and destroy and set up the kingdom of heaven on earth. And this is what we're patiently waiting on. But it says, and he heard the words of his father. He cried with a great and bitter, exceedingly bitter cry, and said to his father, bless me, even me also, O my father. Then he said, thy brother came with subtlety and have taken away thy blessing. And he said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he have supplanted me these 2 times, and he took away my birthright, and behold, now he have taken away my blessing. And he said, hast thou not reserved the blessing for me? And Isaac answered and said unto Esau, behold, I've made him thy Lord. All right, because we're going to rule over these devils. All right, technically they're slaves now, but they have taken the kingdom, or the ruler seat, the Most High put them in power for this last time. All right, which is going to lead in the demise of the Western empires and the other nations. And Esau is going into slavery. And it says here, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants, and with the corn and wine I have sustained him. And what shall I do now to thee, my son? So basically, Isaac gave us the blessing of life, which Isaac is Yahweh Shai. All right, we were given a blessing of life, and Esau was given a blessing of death. Because if you look at the way this man is ruling the society, it's basically death. And that's why King David say, though I walk through the valley of the valley of the shadow of death. That's talking about here in America. Because anywhere you go, it could be a death sentence. It could be from a drunk driver. It could be from stopping at an intersection, a cop pull you over and put 12 hot ones in you. It could be from dying from AIDS. It can be from any sort of thing, man. You can drop dead from a heart attack, infectious diseases. Anything that this kingdom revolves around, it revolves around death. All right. And it says here, and I'm going to go down here, and it says, and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me even also on my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. So basically he cried like a bitch. All right, and he's crying now. This is why he's accusing Jacob. You blacks, Hispanics, and natives, you're the head of coronavirus. You're the terror. You're the scum of the earth. We got to figure out how to do away with these so-called black people. That's him crying, all right? And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling should be the fatness of the earth, and the dew of heaven from above, and by thy sword shalt thou live. And this is why Esau had the most prolific militaries. This is why he had what you call the Space Force, the United States Army, the United States Air Force. You have the Navy SEALs, you got the Secret Service, you got the CIA, you got the Marines, you got the Navy. All these particular branches of military Esau was blessed with, which is his sword. It says, and by thy sword shalt thou live, and shall serve thy brother. All right, because once again, Esau Edom is going to serve us in the kingdom of heaven, and this is what he's ultimately trying to avoid. And this is the name of the lesson. He's trying to tackle a spiritual temple, but you can't tackle something that's spiritual, because you're looking at the spiritual temple, which is the men of the Lord that's set up on the highways and the byways, bringing out these prophecies. Because the scriptures warned you, it told you that once you make a move on the prophets of the Lord is going to raise up a standard against them. And that's what we're waiting on. We're waiting on the Most High to raise up that standard against Esau. When he bringing his vax, he bringing his chip, he brings his military in, then the Lord is going to raise up that right hand. But it says here, and thou shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. Because once they had us in captivity during the time of the Roman Empire, you have somebody by the name of Septimius Severus, which they go cutter of the seven, which pretty much was one of the primary recipients of bringing down the Roman Empire at that time. All right, called him the cutter of the seven, because you got the 7 governments of Esau. You had Germania Minor, Germania Major. You had the Greeks. You had the Spanish. You had the French, you know, you got the British, which they weren't known as the Brits back then. All right, that's a modern term. But anyway, you had the 7 governments of Esau, or the 7 heads of Esau, you know, going into those ancient kingdoms, starting with the Greeks first, then the Romans. But it says here, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said with his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then I will slay my brother Jacob. And we're in this time now, okay? We're in the time of Esau. Edom is laying out the vengeance of the Israelites. This is why throughout our different captivities, such as the Greeks, the Romans, even during the time of, I think his name was Hagen the Agagite, even then, he wanted to do away with Jake, because these devils were hell-bent on stopping us from receiving a blessing. So since the beginning of time, Esau has been on a power struggle with Jake in order to prevent us from getting the kingdom. But the kingdom is already written for the Israelites, so he only can do so much. This is why he's AIDS, the Tuskegee Airmen. You know, this is why you have syphilis. This is why you have Planned Parenthoods, etc. Because Esau Edom wants to prevent us from getting the birthright, but it's already solidified in stone. All right. And it says here, and these are the words of Esau, her elder son, were told to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said it to him, behold, thy brother Esau is touching thee, doth comfort himself, purposing to kill thee. All right. So she told him basically to flee. You know, he had to flee to basically his uncle, Haran, Laban. You know, because for the simple fact Esau wanted to kill him. And hey, he has that perpetual bloodlust to this day. You know, but hey, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, they're getting ready to checkmate Esau ass, man. You know, because hey, everything is written for prophecy's sake. You know, so this is the book of let's start at verses. This is First Maccabees 1, and I'm gonna start at verses 10. It says, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surname Epiphanes. It says the son of Antiochus, the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, because you remember that the Greeks were pretty much in tour with the Romans, but basically they had to become what they called the Greco-Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire, when they came up in power, they exuberated a lot of force. And hey, a lot of times the Greeks, man, they was trying to avoid wars with the Romans because they didn't have the firepower to do so, because the Greek Empire was split pretty much after Alexander died, and once again was distributed to his 4 generals. But nonetheless, the Romans and Greeks knew they were the same people. You know what I'm saying? So basically what happened was they formed what they call the Greco-Roman Empire, and they said, well, look, man, if you want to remain part of this dynasty, you need to merge with us, or we just going to take you over anyway. So it says here, a sure name Epiphanes, son of Antiochus, the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 130th year, the 37th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. And in those days there went out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them that have much sorrow. So this device pleased them well, because you had a lot of sellout jakes too that didn't want to get conquered by the Greeks. So they decided to make a pact with them and do away with the laws of Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, which ended in them being destroyed anyway. Okay, and it says here, then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. All right, and this goes into them trying to attack the temple. You know, because hey, when we were building in the address, the 4th chapter, we were building the temple, and also we had swords in our hand, because you had other nations that was coming up to try to build with us and say, let us sacrifice into your power. But hey, that's not for you to do. All right, so since we don't have a physical temple, now we have the spiritual temple, which is us. You know, and it says here, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and that goes into the word gymnasium, which means naked. All right, which technically that gym shit is really off, because if you look at people there and they're naked, women got those spandex jeans on, men in their adultery. You know, it's really not wise to be working out at a gym, especially for you women. But you know, hey, you're a man of the Lord, hey, you can do away with all that in your mind, you know, but you don't want to become basically a Greek again. But you women, you have no business being in the damn gym. All right, but it says here, and they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. So Esau bought this hell upon Jake, because ultimately he was supplanted of the birthright. So this is him trying to really get that birthright back. He's trying to get back in the graces of the Most High, but he's doing it in a wicked way because he was rejected. So by him being rejected, hey, he's trying to do it by setting up this new world order on the left-hand side, And it started here, and it says here, and made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. But now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, okay, which this is going into, if you precept the book of Daniel, the 11th chapter, this is basically the war between the king of the south and the king of the north, because, hey, the kingdom of the north was basically the Seleucid dynasties, which Antiochus come from, and then Egypt, if you know about Ptolemy, which represents the king of the south. So it says here, and now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he may have the dominion of the two realms. So wherefore he entered into Egypt with the great multitude, and with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and with the great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt, which is going back to the precept Daniel the 11th chapter. All right, you can read about this in Daniel the 11th chapter. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. All right, and then they got the strong cities of the land in Egypt, and he took the spoils thereof. And after Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Israel in Jerusalem with the great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, all right, and took away the golden altar and the candlestick and the light and the vessels thereof. So basically they took over us, they took us down. All right, they took our vessels, they took our relics. All right, we had to sacrifice unto their gods. Well, at least the elect of that time, we just chose death because we refused to live under the rule of the heathen. All right, but the rest of Israel, they succumbed to the welfare or the warfare of Antiochus, man. Because hey, he threatened with death. If you don't circumcise, or you circumcise your kid, or you don't feed him pork, we gonna put him to death. So this is a representation of them attacking the physical temple, but spiritually they're still at Jake because we don't have a physical temple now. And it says, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold and veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple. It says, all which he poured off. And he took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels, and also he took the hidden treasures which he found. All right, going into our menorahs, our particular relics of like the Ark of the Covenant, which it didn't say he took that, but nonetheless we still had ancient murals of things that we replicated in the ancient world. And we had garments, we had menorahs, we had the law, which is the book of the law, which is called the Torah. All right, and it says here, when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoken very proudly. Therefore there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned, and the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of woman was changed, and every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in her marriage chamber was in heaviness, and the land was also moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. That's right, because for the simple fact they were keeping the customs of the heathens, because you had a sect of Jakes that were keeping the law, statutes, and commandments that still called on the name of the Lord. Then you had the other half of Israelites that went and became Hellenized. And you can read about that in the book of Acts as well, But it says here, and after the 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute into the cities, basically you tax collectors, of Judah, who came into Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. Okay, so like you see Jake now going down to those elections, those polls, trying to cast their ballots down there, when you really don't even have a choice as to what your vote is going to be. Because if you go back into the ancient Roman Senate, from Augustus Caesar, from Julius Caesar, all the way down to Titus and Vespasian, you got Caligula, you got what's his name, Brutus. If you look at it, when they tell you that they set up a monarchy among the government, or among the Roman government, they basically told you that the power was in the 1%, or the hierarchy of the government. Just like today, that's how you know that Rome in America is the same pretty much empire. It just reincarnated to be America, but it follows the same monarchy, because monarchy goes into one rule. Mono means one, archy means to rule. So that's the same situation you have now. So you got you dumbass jigs going down to the polls and casting a fucking vote like you got some say-so on what's going on. You don't. And this is why you're seeing that the elections is taking over a course of days, because they trying to figure out how they going to put Trump back in there while stealing the election right under you people's face, because they're expecting you to riot, man. You know? But that's why the scriptures say there's no new thing under the sun. For you jakes out there that believe, oh, well, we got a power of choice. Your vote don't mean nothing, because that's the case. They would have been done counting the votes last night. You know? Because I can't recall a time that an election went past the first day of election night. You know, which is going to lead to an ultimate purge eventually. But nonetheless, hey, this is Bible prophecy. But hey, you ain't going to conquer that spiritual temple, man. All right? Because Revelation 13 and 16, this is Esau Edom basically putting his claim on the Israelites. All right? That's how he's trying to compromise the spiritual temple. This is why he wanted to microchip everybody, man. You know? This is why Job, the 20th chapter, tell you when he getting ready to fill his belly, the Most High shall rain upon him while he is eating. You know? But anyway, this is the book of Revelation 15 and 1. It says here, and I'm going to shut it down after this. But it says, and I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues. For in them is filled the wrath of God. And I saw, as it were, the sea of glass mingled with fire. And them that got the victory over the beast, which the beast is this system. All right? This system that's trying to put the spiritual, or put a physical mark in a spiritual temple, which is the Israelites, mainly the elect. All right? You're going to succeed in chipping majority of Israelites to 2/3, but the hopeful elect, the 144 and the 1/3, we're not going to take that shit. Why? Because we got faith in Yahweh Shem Yahushai. That's why the scriptures say, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. You know? And it says here, and them that have gotten the victory over the beast, over his image, and over his mark, and over the number of his name, stand on a sea of glass, having the harp of the Most High. And they sing a song of Moses, the servant of the Most High, and a song of the Lamb, saying, great and marvelous are thy works, O Lord Yahweh Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, thou King of the saints. All right? So, hey, man, call Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Double honors to the elders, the apostles of great millstone, and rule well, and blessings and salutations unto the hopeful elect. And with that, shalom. Lord's will you were edified. Until the next lesson, shalom.